Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn. I'm a physician recruiter for UMass Memorial Medical Group. Thank you for joining this evening. I can't see you. Hopefully you can see me and see my screen. If anyone can give me a heads up and say something, if you can't, I would appreciate that. But guessing that you can see me and see my screen, so I'm going to move forward with the presentation. If anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to speak up. We don't have the chat enabled right now, but we do have the ability to stop and have a discussion. And I think it's a small enough group that if someone wanted to ask a question in the middle of the presentation, you're welcome to. These are a standard set of slides. I can send the slides out after the presentation to everyone who has RSVP'd. So you'll get these slides. So really this is for you. So if you do have any questions, ask, or we can just save all the questions to the end, and you guys can always reach out to me individually if you'd like as well. So does anyone have any questions or any comments before we get started? No? Okay. Well, again, my name's Carolyn. I work in the Department of Physician Recruitment for UMass Memorial Medical Group. I'm an in-house physician recruiter, and I will be talking today about understanding recruitment and interview preparation. So basically, how to find a job after you finish your training. Okay, so a lot of times people say so first we're going to talk about job search tips, working with recruiters, writing a CV cover letter, interviewing, and then evaluating the opportunity. So many people ask me, where do I even start? You've been in training this whole time, you've had a set schedule and guidelines, but what happens next? And now you have a little bit more flexibility here, but then also leads to the questions of where do I even start? So I recommend starting by really trying to figure out what it is that you're looking for. Depending on your specialty and what you're looking to do, your particular area that you trained in, you might lead to a lot of different options. So you want to conduct an assessment of your personal wants, including location. So geography usually really leads job searches. So where do you want to be? What works well for you, your family, maybe even your specialty? There's a need for physicians in a certain location. Environment, do you want to be in academic? Do you want to be at a community hospital? Do you want to be in a private practice? Long-term goals, do you have academic goals? Do you have leadership goals? And then work-life balance. So are you be working full-time, part-time? Like, what does that look like? So before you even start applying for jobs, just really think about it and get a really good idea of what is important to you. And then start doing your research and figuring out what, just by looking at the internet, going on Facebook pages of organizations, you can really start doing your research, talking to other people about what they know about jobs in that area, and figure out what organizations or practices would possibly have these types of jobs that you're looking for. And then reach out, contact in-house physician recruiters, HR departments at large organizations, medical directors at smaller practices, hiring managers, department chairs, and just start putting feelers out there to see who has something available for what it is that you're looking for. Most residents and fellows start their job search within about 1 year before completing their training. So if you're completing your training June, July of 2024, a good time to start thinking about all this is June, July, August of the year before. So now's a good time to really start having a concrete idea of what it is that you're looking for and start networking and applying. This is the time of year at UMass Memorial Medical Center and within the UMass Memorial Health System where all of our job opportunities are posted, and our recruiters start to get very, very busy because everyone who's looking in this cycle wants to interview, well, really between now and March. So that's typically the timeline. About 28% of residents wait until 6 months before completing their training. And this was a survey that was done of medical residents at Mary Hopkins. There are many different sources of job leads. You can use a search firm recruiter, which we'll talk about. You can look on job boards. You can go to conferences. You're going to get lots of emails from recruiters. You can use social media, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But really, if you look at the 88%, you really see that one of the top ways that physicians are finding jobs is still personal and professional referrals. So really use your networks, reach out to people who you know at organizations you'd like to join, and ask if they'd make a referral for you for a job. Online job boards, almost every society, for specialties society has a job board. So here you'll see ACOG, which is for gynecology, career connection, so OBGYN jobs, psychiatry jobs. New England Journal of Medicine has a very large, robust job board. New England Journal of Medicine Career Center. A lot of primary care jobs, medicine jobs, surgery jobs. I mean, really everything on New England Journal of Medicine. AOA, so if you're looking specifically for an osteopathic job. And then there's Practice Link, Practice Match, Doximity, Cafe, a growing number of online job boards that also have options to post a profile and get contacted by recruiters directly. So a lot of different resources out there. Social media networking, a lot of organizations will post jobs to their Facebook page. They'll tweet out jobs, and you can connect with recruiters on LinkedIn. So if that works for you, I know it's not for everybody to use social media for networking, but if it's something that you are comfortable with doing, definitely look up a recruiter or a department chair on LinkedIn and send them a message and connect with them, or follow them and see what kind of content they post, see what kind of jobs they are advertising for. It can be a really great way to get connected with an organization. And then you'll probably at some point work with a recruiter. And there are 3 different types of recruiters for physicians. There are in-house physician recruiters, which do what I do and what my team does with UMass Memorial Medical Group. There's search firm recruiters or agency recruiters, and then retained firm recruiters. In-house recruiters work directly for a practice, clinic, or hospital, and are employed by that system. They're not paid for a commission for placements, and are also responsible for retention. Much more likely that the in-house physician recruiter lives in the community, or at least visits the community often, and has relationships with people in the organization and can really talk about the hospital with the community with personal experience. Search firm or agency recruiters are more like headhunters. They work for outside agencies whose job it is to place physicians in jobs. The client or the institution that initiates the search usually pays the bill, and the average fees are anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000 per placement. So they tend to be very aggressive because they don't get paid unless that placement is made. And most are not that concerned with whether the position is a good one for you in the long run. They're looking to make that placement. So just might not have your best interests in mind always. They're really, it's a numbers game, and they're looking to make that placement. Retained search firm recruiters is when an agency is hired to act as an in-house physician recruitment function. So say an organization is growing and needs to hire 10 new physicians that year because they've opened up a new wing of a hospital, but it's just a temporary hiring spree. They're not going to hire an in-house physician recruiter or a team for a temporary amount of time. They might bring in a agency to work temporarily within the organization. And so they're acting as in-house physician recruiters, even though they're also working for other organizations. Some do's and don'ts of working with search firm recruiters. Work with a search firm if you cast a wide net. You are very busy and you may not have time to do the research to find an opportunity, and you might work out really well for you to have someone who's bringing jobs to your attention. When you are contacted by a recruiter, ask if they are in-house or if they work for a firm. If you are going to work with an agency recruiter, be very specific about what you're looking for. The location, practice size, if you're looking for teaching, you really want to narrow down the number of job options they're going to send to you, because again, you're busy and you don't want to be having them apply for you for positions that you would never be interested in or accept in the long run. Ask if the recruiter has been to your preferred location or has been to the practice, or if you're deciding on a recruiter to work with. Those are some questions you can ask the recruiter. And ask how your CV will be distributed. Really control the process and make sure that you get rules in writing that say that recruiter can't send your CV to any job unless you have approved it. So only those that you are interested in, and that they make sure that you haven't already applied direct. Because you really don't want to use a recruiter to submit your CV for a position or a job that you already have an in-house connection. Because remember, that $30,000 bill could play a role in the deciding factor of whether or not you get that job. So if you can go in-house, it's always better. Don't work with a search firm that's an NAPR member. This is an organization that has a code of ethics for search firms. Don't work with more than 2 search firms in the same market. And that is because you don't want to start to get confused about who is submitting your CV for different opportunities. Because if 2 recruiters submit your application for the same opportunity, they might end up fighting over who gets the fee if you get hired, and the organization that is hiring you is not going to pay 2 search firm fees. So that may just be a legal battle that you don't want to get involved in. Like I mentioned, don't send your CV to a recruiter if you already have an in-house contact. Don't send your CV to the recruiter without agreeing to rules in email. And never agree to paying a placement fee. Really, the clinic or the employer that hires you should be paying the placement fee. So before we move to the next section, does anyone have any questions about working with recruiters? Okay, we'll continue then. So whether you apply through an online job board or recruiter, you'll be asked to submit a CV. And so a very important part of getting prepared to look for a job is to have your CV updated. Maximum 2 to 3 pages, of course, if you have done a lot of research or if you had different jobs before getting into medicine, it might be longer. But certainly 2 to 3 pages is probably average. Include a cover letter, 1 page, and we'll talk about the cover letter in the next slide. And use a consistent format. There are so many different formats for CVs. Even if you do like a web search of CV formats, you'll see a lot of different formats. So it doesn't really matter which one you use, just make sure it's consistent. I would stay as simple as possible. All black and white, no colors, stick to pretty simple fonts, and just really give it that simple professional look. Give several different contact methods, including cell and email. Dates most recent to last. So that's my preference of how I like to read a CV. And I know a lot of people I talk to like to read it as a CV most recent to last as well. So I want to be able to look, and the first thing I see is where you are right now. And then you go in reverse chronological order from that. Licensure and board certification, name, number on every page. So at the bottom of each page, put like the page number and either your initials or your last name. And then don't forget education and training, professional practice experience, publications, memberships, honors, and awards. And always have a second pair of eyes review your CV. And here's an example of a suggested format. Regarding references, don't include your references with your CV. You'll want to provide references and have your references on a separate sheet and only provide them when you're asked for them. There are a few reasons. One, you want to know where you are in the interview process. So hold on to your references so you know where you are in the timelines. If you go to interview somewhere and then they ask you for your references, you know you're moving forward to the next step. And also, you can give your references a heads up. So make sure you ask your references if it's okay before listing them as a reference, and then let them know when they're about to be contacted. And you can even give them a little bit of information about the position and who it is that's going to be reaching out to them. So giving your references that prep really will help make sure that they're not caught off guard and that they're prepared to give you an accurate reference. The interview process is typically multi-step.
I have a quick question. Just about the references. Hi. In terms of the references, how often do people ask for references? And are you talking professional, personal, or both?
Yeah, great question. So these are professional references. So most likely you'll be asked for a reference from your program director.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone who you've worked closely in clinic. And possibly someone you've done research with or teaching with if you're looking for an academic job. So really the third is really going to depend on what type of position that you are interviewing for. But you'll most likely, and anyone will want to talk to either a program director or an associate program director of your current training program, and someone who you've worked closely with clinically.
Okay. And I guess, like, how often do they ask for references, and at what point do they ask for references? Is it shortly after you give your CV, or prior to interviewing, or after interviewing?
This varies. There's no standard of how this is done. And so I would, say that you could interview for 5 jobs and they do it 3 different ways or 4 different ways. I have, heard of people being asked for references, before they interview. I think the most common is that it's the last thing that happens before the offer letter. Okay,
thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no problem. Those are 2 excellent questions. So most likely you'll be asked for references after you interview and before you get an offer letter.
Gotcha.
Does anyone have any other questions while we're still on the references? The interview process. This is another one that's going to vary, but during the interview process, you could be asked for a phone screen, which would typically be with a recruiter or someone from HR to go over your CV, to go over your experience and your background, to ask some typical HR questions like, about your background, any malpractice history, anything in your background that or delay credentialing, things like that. So a phone screen could include questions like that. Also wondering, you know, what is bringing you to the area, what led you to apply to that position. Then phone interviews or Zoom interviews would be with a leader in the department, and then on-site interviews, either on-site or video interviews to meet more people in the group, depending on the size of the group. In the phone screen or a phone interview, schedule a time that's convenient when you don't have any distractions. So nights when you're on call may not be the best idea. So set aside adequate time. If you're unable to make the call or foresee distractions, request to reschedule. So if something comes up and you have to cover for somebody, or a clinic is running late, just make sure you let the person know and ask to reschedule. Use a line with a good connection and be prepared for a FaceTime or video request. And be enthusiastic and be sincere. Be aware of the tone of your voice. You know, even if you have to take the phone call, you know, on speakerphone in the car after a long day, like just, it's an interview and it's your, the way that you make an impression, that the impression that you make on the person who you're talking to could depend on whether or not you move forward to the next round. So it is important, and definitely, you know, make the time for your phone screens. Some of the questions that you might be asked in a first round phone call are, why are you pursuing this opportunity? What type of practice are you looking for? What kind of community do you want to live in? Malpractice history, if you have any restrictions on your license. When are you available to start? So if you have a specific timeline that you're following, and any visa related considerations. So if you are a foreign medical grad and need a J-1 visa waiver or an H-1B visa, that is something that, you know, you should definitely let people know about within, you know, usually on your CV or your cover letter, or at least the first phone call before the site visit, so that if there are any restrictions or any changes that need to be made based on that can be taken into consideration before the site visit. And you get to ask questions. So you are interviewing the organization or the job that you're applying for just as much as they're interviewing you. So you get to ask questions about the organizational structure, call, benefits, why they're recruiting. Is this a growth opportunity? So are they adding physicians to the group? Did someone retire? Did someone leave? Did 5 people leave? If everyone's leaving, why are they leaving? Physicians in the group, who are they? What's the group dynamics? How long have they been working there? What is the EMR? What's the communication with the hospitalist or the inpatients or the specialist or the ED? And then ask what the next step is. And, you know, see if you can get an idea of what to expect next and what their process is. Uh-oh. It was weird. Huh. Evaluate, sorry, it looked like my slides were mixed up for a second there. Then you get to evaluate the opportunity. So decide if you would consider this job before you take time to go on site to interview. So just because you had a phone screen and someone invites you to interview doesn't mean you have to accept the interview invitation. You may talk with 10 recruiters and decide that you're going to go on 4 on-site interviews. You know, you really have to think about what jobs have what you're looking for and the geographic location that you're looking for, because you don't have an endless amount of time to interview. So you kind of have to be pick and choose sometimes. And if you are going to decline the interview, make sure you let them know. Do so professionally, because you know, you might want to interview there in the future. So don't just you know, stop responding or disappear. Definitely tell them if you're not interested, and you can even give them some feedback as to why. And then if you are going to go on site to interview, be prepared for pre-interview paperwork or some type of online application. To prepare for the interview may be in person or in Zoom. Ask for a list of people who you'll be meeting with, so a interview schedule. And then you could do some research, visit the department website, review roles and responsibilities, look at the names and the titles of the different people you're meeting with, maybe even look up their profiles online. Consider any special concerns you'd like addressed that day. Is there time for a community tour? Do you want to see some local schools for your children? And then share these requests with your in-house physician recruiter. Is a tour important to you? Do you want to see the OR? Do you want to see the downtown area of the city? So while you're there, if there are things that you want to do and there are things that you need help or guidance with, definitely tell the recruiter or whoever's setting up your interview that that's important to you. Bring copies of your CV, and when you're in interviews, have your cell phone on silent. So here's a list of interview sample questions. And like I said, I'll send this out, so you don't need to write all these down, but you'll want to ask people what they like about working there. What's the practice philosophy, mission, culture? What's the call schedule? What are the responsibilities beyond patient care? So if there's any research or teaching responsibilities, how performance is measured. So ask about the comp plan and if their group is currently meeting targets, current payer mix. So all different questions that you can ask. And be prepared for behavioral based interviewing, which is real life situations where you might be asked to explain a situation. Tell me about a time when you had a difficult patient encounter. What happened? How was it resolved? What was the outcome? Or tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a colleague. What happened? Describe it for me. Give me an example. So I just always like to have people have a few examples in their mind of situations that are real life situations that have happened to you that you can talk about that really relay your behavior that's related to the situation. A few do's and don'ts of interview day. Do follow any COVID protocols that are required. So ask ahead of time. There was a time that we were doing, testing before or isolation for a few days, but, just because those went away doesn't mean that they don't still, places don't still have some protocols in place. So ask. On your interview day, look interested, remain eye contact, be positive, ask questions, take notes, bring copies of your CV, ask about the next steps in the hiring process, be honest and be yourself, and send a thank you note, email, and within 48 hours. Some don'ts. Don't show up looking unprofessional for in-person or Zoom. I always recommend wearing a suit for an interview day or other professional attire. If you are going on site, and especially if you're going to interview at a big medical campus, wear comfortable shoes because you might be doing a lot of walking. Don't forget your list of questions. Don't negotiate during the first meeting. Really there's a time and a place and a person for negotiating, and it's usually after the offer has been made. So be mindful of who you're talking and negotiating with. Only do so with the leader of the group who is making the offer. Don't bring a spouse or children unless invited. So if you are traveling out of state and it is important to you that your family come with you, let that be known and ask what the protocol is and what the processes are for that organization for spouse or children. And then, be respectful of that and don't run up huge expenses, right? So they might say, you might be told, like, we made you a reservation at the local hotel. When you get in the night before, go down to the restaurant, get yourself some dinner, charge it to the room. You don't want to be ordering the most expensive bottle of wine, every dessert on the menu, running up the bill, because they're going to see it, and it will be linked to you. Then you get to evaluate the opportunity. So there's so many aspects of a job that you're going to evaluate. So understanding the expectations of the practice, clinical, cultural, productivity, a path to partnership. There are still partnership opportunities out there, and call, ratio, and format. Other topics to address, the structure of the practice, marketing, local competition, the reputation of the group. So is a group a leader in the market, or is the group struggling to maintain a reputation, or a good reputation? Patient and payer mix. Mentoring is really important, especially as you're coming out of training. You want to ask if there's going to be a process for orientation or a mentoring opportunity, someone in the group who's interested in mentoring you as a new physician to the practice. Marketing of new physicians. So is there a systematic way to let the community or let other physicians know that you're there and that you are accepting new patients, or are you expected to build a patient panel all on your own? What's the support staff? Really important. Office equipment, technology, especially if there's a specific piece of equipment or technology that is important and necessary for you to do your job. Scheduling and how that gets done, and referral patterns, and if you have specialist support for referrals. And evaluate the compensation. And this is complicated, and it's getting more and more complicated, but really try to understand the market variables, set realistic expectations, understand what's included in overhead, and making sure when you're comparing opportunities that you're really comparing equal, like apples to apples, because there's a lot of different structures. Some jobs have high salary guarantee but no bonus. Other jobs may have a lower salary guarantee but great potential for bonuses and great benefits. So you really want to look at all of the different components that go into the total compensation. And that also includes signing bonuses. It could include loan repayment, help with relocation. So all of those things are important to take into consideration. Benefits are also another factor that go into compensation, really, because they do have a dollar value. How much of the medical, dental, and optical are you going to be expected to pay for versus what is your employer covering? Is there a retirement or a pension plan? 401k, 304B, matching. So does the organization that you are going to be working for have a program to either match or contribute to your retirement plan? Long-term disability, short-term disability, vacation, sick time, PTO, CME, time and dollars allocated to CME, and malpractice insurance. So you definitely want to make sure that your employer is providing a malpractice insurance plan that works for you and the risk that you are taking on for your particular specialty and as a physician in the state that you'll be working. There are different types of malpractice insurance. There's claims made, which only covers you for the term of the policy, and would require you to purchase tail coverage upon termination. So if a malpractice case were to come up for something that happened after you left the organization, but you were there at the time, if you only have claims made, you would not be covered. You would have to get tail coverage or ask your next employer to purchase the nose coverage for you. Or you can have occurrence-based, which covers for an incident that occurs while the policy is in effect, regardless of whether the claim is filed when you are still at that organization under that plan or not. So you would not need nose or tail coverage when you leave. Does anybody have any questions before we move forward to the next section? This would be a good place for me to stop and take a breather. All right, keep going. So the job offer, after all of this hard work, the offers start to roll in. You probably get your first offer verbally. So someone might call you and present the details over the phone. It could be a recruiter, it could be a department chair, it could be a lead physician, someone in HR, whoever it is you've really been speaking with and really negotiating with, or talking the details of the compensation throughout the process. And that's followed by an offer letter that is in writing, and lists the compensation, the work location, the call schedule, and the reporting structure. And then the contract, which is legally binding and has more detailed information, pardon me, about terms, benefits, malpractice, and academic appointment, medical staff memberships. You will have the opportunity to negotiate and use your key contact with your recruiter or HR person to know what is negotiable and what's not, because there are going to be things that are negotiable and there are going to be things that are not. Don't be pressured to make a decision until you're ready. Wait to receive that offer before you start negotiating, and don't start negotiating until you're ready to accept an offer. And what I mean by that is, don't spend your time or anyone else's time negotiating a job that you don't want anyway. And if you are negotiating a job and you ask for 3 things and you get all 3 things, be prepared to accept the position. So people do expect that if you're negotiating and you get what you asked for, that you will then sign, accept. Make sure your requests are reasonable and doable. Really, I can't stress enough that things can take a turn during the negotiation process, and I've seen offer letters pulled because of unreasonable negotiations. So it does happen. So remember, you're still in the interview process, even during negotiations. You need to be aware of the offer deadline. So if you're negotiating and the deadline on the offer passes, that you could lose the job offer. And if you are negotiating and being completely unreasonable and unprofessional, you could lose the job offer. It's a give and take. So you might not get everything that you want, but know what is most important to you. And then for closing the deal, to accept an offer, you accept or decline a position verbally. You can follow up by email. Do not accept an offer by voicemail. Ask to have a phone call, and be comfortable with DocuSign. It used to be all about wet signatures, but now most, forms official these days are signed by DocuSign. It's not official until the contract is executed. The contract should be countersigned, both parties. Both parties should retain an original copy, and note the contract effective dates versus start dates, and understand what the next step is in credentialing to prevent delays. For the offer letter and the contract, you are welcome, definitely take your time and have it reviewed. You can have it reviewed by an attorney as well. Just know that there is a cost to that. And if you are told that the contract is boilerplate and that no changes can be made, make sure that you are telling your attorney that, so they're not charging you money to try to make edits to a contract that doesn't have an option to make any changes. And that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Here's my contact information. I am here in Worcester. I have an office at the university campus. My email is carolyn.jacobs@umassmemorial.org. And myself and my team recruit for all opportunities with UMass Memorial Medical Groups. That's UMass Memorial Medical Center, the community hospitals, and the outpatient CMG practices. So if you are interested in staying at UMass for a faculty position after you finish your training, feel welcome to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you. With that, I'll open it up to questions. Comments?
I thank you for your presentation. I think it was really helpful. I'm kind of early in this looking for jobs process, so there's a lot of trying to learn by doing. So this is really helpful to have. I did have a question about the contracts. Like, about how much time are we given to, like, between the time that we're given the contract and when we have to sign it? And like, what's a reasonable amount of time?
A reasonable amount of time is 2 weeks. It might be shortened in different situations to 10 days. I've seen all the way up to 1 month. So, there's no absolute standard amount of time. If someone said to you, we need you to make a decision and sign this in 3 days, I'd say that that would be unreasonable. And if you're given a contract and for whatever reason, whether it be, you're going out of town or you still have one more interview to go on, or you want your attorney to review it and, they can't look at it for another few days. If you need an extension, just have that conversation with the person. And ask them, to grant the extension. But yeah, I mean, I would say 2 weeks is probably the most reasonable amount of time to review an offer letter and a contract and make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about CVs. Like, how far back should a CV go?
Great question. As far back that is relevant to the job that you're applying for, so I don't think it's as much as, how far back it goes, but is that experience important to the interviewer. So if when you were, your first job out of, I don't know, high school, or when you were in college was working at a hospital, then yes, include that. But if it was working at a coffee shop, don't include it. So it's not so much how far you go back, it's if what you're putting on there is relevant.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
How early should you notify your references? Like, do they need to write letters these days, or do they usually get phone calls? What's that process like?
They usually get phone calls. I think letters are not as typical as getting a phone call. Most of the time people want to hear, really talk with someone. But most of your references are going to, not all of them, but a lot of them are going to be very familiar with giving references and having those conversations or writing those letters. But when you are asked to provide references, clarify. If you're not told, say, do you need letters, or do you want email addresses or phone numbers? And the person who has requested the references will be able to clarify that for you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I had another question. What kinds of things should we put in a cover letter?
Great question. I feel like I had a slide on that. I don't know what happened to it, but for the cover letter, you want to introduce yourself and say what is leading you to apply to the job. So make a connection. If it is that you are from the area and you want to move back because that's where your family and your friends are, put that in the cover letter. If you have a certain connection to a program there and like that what you are interested in doing, they do really well there. I'm sorry, I can't see you. I don't know what you're training in right now, but you can make a connection that way. Just basically open it up by saying why you are applying for the position, a brief paragraph about you and what makes you a good fit for the position, and then close with saying that you're very interested in speaking with someone to get more details about the position and how you can be reached.
Thank you so much. I had a question on negotiations. So, can you sort of guide
okay.
us on?
So I'm
Can you
sorry.
hear me?
Yeah, 1 second. I just went back to the slide that says cover letter
Excellent. Okay.
because I think I might have skipped over that. But yeah, introduce yourself, explain why you're applying for the position, pitch yourself, explain why it's desirable, and then the best way to reach you. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem at all. So it was more on negotiation and guiding us on sort of the principles, and then can we reach out to your department if we maybe have a job and we're not really sure, the best way to negotiate like an offer? Is that something that you can help us with?
Would it for a job offer from another organization?
Even within the UMass system. Yes, within UMass. Like, is that something that you'll be able to help
You
with?
want to talk to the recruiter that you're currently working with. Or if you're not currently working with a recruiter, ask the department chief, the chair, the division chief, who the recruiter is, who you can talk with about negotiating.
Wonderful, thank you.
Welcome. What other questions do people have?
I don't want to jump too far ahead because I know that there's going to be another session on negotiating contracts in a month, but I feel like I'm kind of like in the process of doing that already. So I just kind of had a question about negotiating. Let's say like at the place where you're wanting to work, the salary can't change much. It's set. The benefits are pretty much set. So then do people tend to negotiate like where they're working, how much they're putting into specific areas? Like, are those the places that they're negotiating, or are there other things maybe I'm missing?
It depends on the position, it really depends on the position, what can be negotiated. You may be able to negotiate, academic time. You might be able to negotiate a piece of equipment being purchased. You might be able to negotiate a higher signing bonus. So while salaries are typically non-negotiable because they're set up with equity in mind, the different aspects of that can be negotiated are more if you need a piece of equipment, or if you want some more CME time to get a certain certification, or as I mentioned, signing bonus. So those are some factors that are sometimes negotiable.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions? We still have a little bit of time. All right, well.
Actually, I
no,
have one more question. Sorry.
Go for it.
In terms of compensation models, it's not something that's like readily taught in residency. And so I'm just wondering if you have any resources where we could like potentially find out more about it, or if that's going to be in the next talk in a month.
That will be in the next talk.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome. Great. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining and participating. And you have my contact information now. So if there's anything I didn't address, or if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Best wishes to you all in your job search. And yeah, thanks for all you do.